Okay, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Robert Smirking Gun Reviews, and we are doing one more video on this glorious Wednesday, and that's going to be what was a small movie is now being talked about by a lot of people, and I was trying to get to it, but it took me till today. So we're going to review Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. This is one of those films that doesn't get made anymore, really, not that often. And every once in a while, I'd say like every year, there is like this movie that people all talk about. And the movie that you kind of have to see or experience. And I feel like this is that movie. A lot of people have been praising it, and rightfully so. Now, to be clear, like a lot of people say, this movie is not for everyone. This movie is a hard R. And it will also test people's patience at the beginning because for some reason, not me, I did not find anything practically wrong. I love this movie. This is just one of those, I actually found myself riveted for the first hour. So there will be spoilers if you haven't seen this. This was like a limited release movie, but you can get it on Amazon, and that's where I watched it. And so, before I get to spoilers, this is a movie I have to talk about. I can't just do a quickie review and say, go see this movie, man, it's really good. I gotta talk about this movie. But first, we'll give my general thinking on this. So, this movie is like part 70s grindhouse revenge movie. It reminds me of like a little bit of like Italian horror. With just kind of the visuals and like the weird mind stuff and just kind of how trippy it is. It's like an homage to heavy metal. It's got great little bits of animation that are like the cartoon movie Heavy Metal. It's got just weird just imagery. The way it's shot is fantastic. It's haunting. It's scary. It's just... Ugh. Now, I don't know if Nicolas Cage was like their first choice, but I mean, this is that kind of movie where if somebody were to go, like, if you could have anybody be in your movie, who would it be? And even then, I think this seems to be tailor-made to Nicolas Cage. And again, I'm not the first one to say this. They are playing to his strengths in this movie. He has very little dialogue. It's all, again, I feel like I'm treading other people's reviews, but it's all true. So much of it is carried on his face and his emotions and his screams and just the stuff that we love about Nicolas Cage, either in a bad movie or a good movie. So he is absolutely great. The actress who plays Mandy, I forget her name. She was in like Oblivion with Tom Cruise. She is haunting in this movie as the titular Mandy. Her eyes, there's this thing that they did with her eyes that are just unbelievably hypnotic and creepy, and just, you can't not look at her. And basically, something bad happens. Before we get to spoilers, I mean, something really bad happens, and he ends up, going on this revenge trip. This commune, these little cultist type, not Jesus freaks. They kind of get described as Jesus freaks at one point, but these are like David Koresh kind of motherfuckers. But that take a lot of LSD. These people are fucking gone. And from beginning to end, like the first hour of this movie is the build up to what will happen later. And some people would find it slow. This movie is like 2 hours long, but I never felt like there are slow burns that feel, most slow burns are called slow burns for a reason. It takes a long time to pay off. To me, this was not a slow burn. I was mesmerized from beginning to end. And in a lot of ways, I love the first hour as much as I love the second hour, because I just couldn't look away. And in some ways, I was more like unsettled and felt more unease during the first hour than I did the second half. Just felt like, okay, let's get to some, carnage. And so if you're one of those people that, would consider this a slow burn, I don't know if you'd like this, or you'd have a hard time getting through this first hour to get to the second hour. But if you are one of those people who wants to see the carnage that happens later, you might be one of those people who could put up with this. And I shouldn't say like putting up with it like at all. So I'm just going to get into spoilers. Like I said, this movie is not for everyone at all. But I do think that a lot of people are going to overlook this. And if you can't handle like gruesome violence, then yeah, this is not for you. And also, if you can't handle there's a general, like I said, uneasiness that I felt that you could just get really creeped out over through the first hour. There's an evil in this first hour that's, not violent. Well, I mean, there's violence, but the evil is palpable in that first hour of this movie. And it really creeps me the fuck out, to be honest with you. So I'm going to get into spoilers now because I can't not. So Mandy and, God, I don't even know. I don't know if they ever even say his name. But I know they say his name. They have to say his name, right? Red. That's fitting. He's like a lumberjack. They're out in this place called the Shadow Mountains. Now, when I say, okay, so about Shadow Mountains, when they do these like title cards, there's 3 of them. They do one for the Shadow Mountains, where it takes place and when, in 1983. They do one for the Children of the New Dawn. It's the name of the cult, or the, hippie cult or whatever. And then they do one for Mandy later, I think, and that's what he names this axe, I think, is what, like, named after her. And they're all done with these great, like, heavy metal inspired, like, you'd see this kind of thing, the lettering on, like, t-shirts and stuff from, like, back in the 70s and 80s. Really, really cool. Really cool. I loved it. So anyway, he and her live out in the woods. They got this great bedroom where it's all, like, glass surrounding them, like, kind of a plexiglass, so that they could see, like, the forest and everything. It was dope. I loved it. Well, and there's a scene right at the beginning. So they're like in the water. Oh, and there's this great shot of like them in a boat, like a rowboat. And it was such like 70s scary grindhouse where you know something bad's going to happen pretty soon. But there's a scene right after that where he's like sitting by the fire and he looks like out over the water. And there she is, like just kind of looking at him, like about here through the water, like here up, and her eyes looking at him. There's like this mesmerized look, but also a look of kind of like terror on his face. And as she gets up and gets closer to the fire, and you can't look away from this woman. Her eyes, one eye is like bigger and bolder than the other. Like and she's looking, and she's got this scar like under her eye. And there's this look again, like I can't tell if it's awe or horror or a mix of all these things. Like there's an unsettlingness to her, but at the same time, like it's hypnotic and sad, and just like she seems like a really sweet person, but like there's just this kind of look to her that I can't, like a darkness or something inside her too, that's just kind of there. But like when she talks about stuff, like she finds this like dead deer, this baby deer, and she has this like there's like this empathy to her, and you wouldn't know that darkness then. You wouldn't see that. And like she talks about her she talks about her favorite planets, and she's cool, man, and groovy and stuff. And it just, she seems like this down to earth chick who just likes heavy metal and likes reading heavy metal books and all this kind of stuff. But like there's a whole bunch about Mandy that you never really find out about. And it's kind of crazy, but kind of cool at the same time. So soon after this movie starts and all that, he says something like we should move, and she doesn't want to, and that's just kind of a little throwaway thing. But she is walking down the road, and she gets this look on her face, and this car's coming by, and it's these cultists. These, I guess they're a cult. They're just they're a bunch of people following this guy who thinks he's a religious guy. So that's a cult, right? So there's just not that many of them. There's like 6 or 7 of them or something like that. So it's not a big cult. They're like in this van. It's these hippies that take too much drugs, and their leader is this guy who's, fucking LSD mental psychopath. They pass her on the road, and he immediately just sees her, and of course, like we see her, like, and I can't not look at her. She's hypnotic looking. Well, this guy sees the same thing and has, just desires her. I want her. And this actor, Linus Roach, reminds me of like a young Peter Fonda in this movie from like Easy Rider days. It turns out I forgot that Linus Roach was Thomas Wayne in the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan movie series. So it's like weird seeing like Thomas Wayne be this like really creepy hippie guy cult leader. Well, he asks for this thing called the Horn of Abraxas, and him and a couple of his dudes go out, and they blow this horn, and these crazy looking bikers that look like something out of Hellraiser show up, which again, everybody's been saying that they look like they're Hellraisers, but they're just fucking tweaked out bikers that have like taken a bad batch of LSD. It's told later on by Bill Duke's character that these are guys that just were dosed up so bad that they're gone. They are gone, and they are just twisted. And they drink this stuff like it's, they're constantly, completely just on a different level. And they are hired by this group to take Mandy to this guy Jeremiah. So they break into the house, and it's so freaking creepily shot. It is so unnerving, but just filmed so creatively. And they take her and they dose her with acid, and they sting her with a wasp for some reason, and they bring her before him, and he's just this petulant child, just as your typical, he's a small, he's a huge ego who can't take criticism. And I gotta give it up to the actor Linus Roach for going way full frontal nudity for like a long time. And she ends up like, when he's playing this music that he made, and he's naked in front of her, and she just starts laughing at him, and, uncontrollably laughing at him, because she's dosed up to the gills and scared out of her mind, and he, loses it. And this is where we find out that they've got Red tied up outside, like barbed wire in his mouth and all tied up, and they come outside, and like any guy who just small person, he goes out there, and he ends up, one of his believers like puts a gun to her head and fires. He's like, you want to see love, this is love, and then he stabs him with this knife that he calls something or other. All this stuff is supposed to mean something. These people are all fucking lunatics. So they stab him, and then they bring her out in a sleeping bag, all tied up, and they tie her up, and they light her on fucking fire in front of him. And then they leave, and he's left with the ashes that look still kind of like her face, and it's really crazy and really sad and just fucked up beyond belief. Because, like when she was on fire, like the sleeping bag was like moving back and forth and everything, and just, Well, once he gets himself loose, which I don't understand why they didn't kill him, but whatever. You don't have a movie, I guess, otherwise. He eventually gets inside the house, and he's all, he's got this tiger shirt on, and he finds his body because he's like, it's clear he's probably like a recovering alcoholic from an earlier scene, a brief scene, but it seems to me like he's not a drinker anymore. But he goes right for the hidden bottle of vodka, starts pounding it, and he has one of the great Nicolas Cage freakouts of all time in this bathroom. It is fucking unbelievable, and just, it's perfect for this movie. This scene is perfect. It's Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, just pounding booze and screaming. So this is where he gets motivated to go out and find these people. He goes to Bill Duke's trailer where he gets his old crossbow back, and he gets the exposition from him about these bikers, that they were dosed by a guy who didn't like them, and now they're out there killing people, prostitutes, and dumping bodies on. They're just bad news, but somehow nobody's been able to find them, and he's able to find them pretty easily. He takes out the first one with like a crossbow, and when he tries to run him over, like, the guy's got so much metal, and he's standing and kind of like kneeling in the road, that when he hits him and kills him, the truck flips over. And right before this, he does make the Mandy axe, which is crazy heavy metal. It's badass. It's like, it makes Buffy's axe kind of look quaint, if you know what I'm talking about. The axe that Buffy gets at the end of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's pretty much as badass as that, I'd say. Except hers had a wooden stake and he's got a metal stake. So they take him, they got him tied up, they got a nail through his hand and everything, and he proceeds to eventually take all these dudes out in crazy fashion. The one dude gets a pipe to his fucking head and then throw him down like a vent. He comes back and tries to shoot him. And I had to put on the captions because I couldn't understand what Nicolas Cage is screaming. And it was, "You tell my favorite shirt!" He screams that twice before he snaps dude's neck like, oh, Bruce Lee look on his face. And then you get this one huge dude who's just taking piles of coke, just smashing his face in, and he ends up stabbing him up and getting blood all over his face, and Cage is just taking the blood to him like, yeah. It's fantastic. And he takes a glass, like a piece of shard of glass with a bunch of coke on it, and just does it all. And then he takes a dab of the LSD that these guys have been taking, and they've said stuff like it before about this stuff will melt your face off. Well, in this case, it's like mentally true. His face like melts off for a second, like in a hallucinogenic state. And then he proceeds to find the rest of the group. First, he tracks down the chemist that made. They don't explain why or how he needs this chemist, but the chemist knows, like, where he found this chemist, I don't know. But the chemist is played by, which is really weird because there's another Batman Begins actor in here, and that's Richard Brake. He plays the chemist in this. Richard Brake played Joe Chill in Batman Begins. And in this, the chemist character tells Nicolas Cage, where to find the Children of the Dawn, the New Dawn. And it's kind of interesting that in Batman Begins, Joe Chill killed Thomas Wayne, played by Linus Roach. And in this, the chemist played by the guy who played Joe Chill leads Nicolas Cage to kill Linus Roach's character, Jeremiah. Weird. Just weird. Just a little thing I thought I'd mention. I don't think there's anything else I need for this. But I just wanted to make sure I got that across. I just thought that was really interesting. And there's a tiger in this scene named Lizzie for some reason. Yes, there was a tiger on Cage's shirt. So he tells Cage where to find them. And then we get this crazy heavy metal type shot with the tiger going, "Rawr," and it's all badass. It's just freaking amazing. So he tracks these people down. First, he finds the dude who was driving the van. And he proceeds to, there's a young girl with him, and he lets her go because, of course, she seems like the one that was just kind of forced along with everything. I don't know. I would have taken her out too. Screw it. These are the kind of people you don't care what happens to them. They're like Nazis. the worse that can happen to him, the better. And he like sticks the sharp end of this thing and just slowly starts stabbing him with it. It is, if you like that kind of thing in movies, in a revenge movie, it was fucking amazing. Then he goes after the guy, other guy. He hits him in the face with the axe, which is great. And then we get the chainsaw fight, which is fantastic. He's got like this big ass chainsaw and then Cage does a Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider impersonation, grabs the chain, whips it around. He's kind of got like this biker outfit that he stole from those guys, and he whips it around dude's neck like Ghost Rider, and like pulls him down on top of the giant chainsaw, and it's freaking blood just spraying everywhere. And it's why some of this reminds me of like an Italian horror movie, or like a Dario Argento kind of thing. I think. And then he gets to the one lady that was at the beginning of the movie he's one of Jeremiah's women, and she says this crazy shit about how she's the best lover in the world. Next thing you know, her head's getting kicked across the room. And we meet Jeremiah, who is trying to posture, but as soon as Nicolas Cage puts his hands on him, he just turns into fucking like, no! And he starts to gain like a half a second of courage because I think he knows it's all over. He tries to be, I'm going to say some badass shit on my way out. But then he says something about God, and Cage goes, "I'm your God now." Just squeezes his head until his face pops open and he dies. And he burns the place down, drives away. And he has this memory of Mandy, the first time they met, I think, and how she's in the car next to him back then, and then how his face is now covered in blood, looking at her now as he drives away, and the background is this crazy heavy metal looking thing, which is beautiful. And that's the end of the movie. One of the other things I want to, and it's just fantastic, it is one of those movies I'm going to definitely buy. And keep on my shelf just for special occasions, like it's Mandy time. And there was like another great shot that I forgot to talk about where Jeremiah is talking to Mandy and giving this really creepy speech, and like how his face was being overlaid with hers while he's giving the speech. So sometimes it's him and sometimes it's her. It was really cool. So I highly recommend watching this. If you're in the spoiler section, you probably watched it, and I hope people agree with me on what I said. This is just a fantastic movie. It is so crazy. I heard about this movie through Brad Jones on Stone Gremlin Productions. He's like my favorite YouTuber. So if you haven't been to his channel, check it out. And then I saw the review of this on Red Letter Media. They're like also one of my top favorite YouTube channels. So if you haven't seen them, check them out too. They gave really good reviews. So I'm glad that I heard about this, and then all of a sudden everybody started reviewing this movie. So again, just like other movie reviews, I'm like the last one to the party. But anyway, I hope I gave a pretty decent review. I even wore kind of a crazy t-shirt for it. Just I needed a chainsaw. I needed something that seemed a little heavy metal. This is about as metal as it gets for me. So anyway, if you liked this review, please hit the like button, share, subscribe. We are one away, as of right now, one person away from 300 subscribers. So that's all I'm saying. It's amazing. We're almost there. I can't believe it. I wanted to be at 300 by the end of the year, and it's still September. So I want to thank everybody for all the support and everybody that chooses to watch these videos, even if you don't subscribe. Shame on you. I'm just kidding. I don't. So anyway, this is Robert Smirking Gun Review saying, damn man, check this movie out. You won't be disappointed if you are a revenge horror movie fan and a person who kind of likes a little bit of avant-garde and some snazzy kind of surrealism thrown in for just good measure. So this is Rob. We'll see you later. Bye.